Okay, my friends, today we're going to talk about Chet Norton and was he a drug free bodybuilder when he beat Arnold Schwarzenegger in '66? We're also going to talk about the backstory on Chet, which is really interesting. I actually did a video just about 2 years ago on that factor, and it was from a muscle builder article that Dave Draper wrote. And we're going to have the workout from that at least. But this was another take from Earl Lederman on Chester, and it tells the whole story about how he wasn't a huge athlete. He did a little bit of stuff in high school. After he was 18, he had this horrible car accident, almost died. Literally came within even closer than an inch of his life. In that he had a shard of glass that went through an eyeball, and if it went a little bit deeper, it would have hit his brain and killed him. So anyway, we get into at this point in this article, he's 25 years old. He's 5'11". He's 220. And it gives all the particulars of his size. Big dude. And even after all that crazy stuff where both of his legs were basically shattered and back problems, he ended up being able to still squat 500 pounds and bench in the fours and, do curls with over 200 pounds and etc. Here he is. And this is back in those days. This is right around that time when he did beat Arnie. Here it talks about the terrific auto smash up and just basically how wrecked his body was, and he was in a wheelchair, and he wasn't really athletic in his younger days, and the only reason he got into weight training at all was after this horrendous accident. He There happened to be like a really light pair of dumbbells, and he asked the doctor if he could start using them. He said, "Yeah, just be really careful, take it slow." So he did, and went on from there. Here he is, and he was Mr. He did make Mr. America and Mr. Universe. Had a pretty long career. Started in '60 and was well into the '70s, and then later on he got into drug tested, drug free meats and stuff like that, and master stuff. Um, Again, you can read the whole ordeal here. Uh, there he is again on Strength and Health. That was in '64. So he was just up and coming at that point. Had not quite peaked, and I would say he kind of maintained his peak after the mid '60s for quite a while. Talks about hobbling around on crutches, this, that, and the other. Again, in a wheelchair, sees the dumbbells. So he starts lifting weights and gets into it, and eventually ends up gaining like 80 pounds in less than a year. So he got up to 240, and then he decided to get into bodybuilding competition. So he lost like 30 pounds to get down to, ripped. And in those days, pretty much anything under 10% was considered ripped. You didn't have to really get down to 2-3% uh, body fat. Um, so then when he gets into serious training, he trains 6 days a week with the alternate system, and we'll get into his actual training program, which again is you can see that I took all those pictures from my last video, which was from about 2 years ago, as I mentioned. And we'll sprinkle these magazine covers of Chet. Good looking guy, and he ends up getting in the Bodybuilding Hall of Fame in 2009. We'll have a couple pictures from that later on. Talks about his eating. I mean, obviously, certainly, and it describes actually what he was eating. Incidentally, one of the things that he ate, raw milk, but he also took desiccated liver. I'm going to do a video about desiccated liver and how those old school guys used it. There he is up there with Dennis Tenorino on the Muscle Training Illustrated. Um, Now, was he drug free? So talks about him being a gentleman and nice guy, all that kind of stuff. It would be, was personable with everybody, would help everybody out. Uh, Talks about that he would make a splendid Mr. America, which did happen, obviously. And we'll show his bodybuilding resume. Now, in this picture, he looks pretty massive, and I highly question whether he was drug free for his entire career. I think what my take is, and here he is. This is just the '66 NABBA Mr. Universe contest, which he won, and you can see he beat out Arnie there. Some other good guys in that group too, but there he is on cover of Iron Man. I think that. First of all, just given his situation in the hospital, that if there's any legit reason to give somebody steroids, it would be what his situation was in the hospital, and I think they may have given him stuff in there. Now, I think what he did was ultimately, after his career was coming to its close, he decided to go into drug free and promote drug free bodybuilding because he saw all the problems that steroids was creating. So this is the article that I did with the last video, as I mentioned a couple years ago, and it's he cheated death and became America's most muscular man. And again, you could see that level of muscularity in the '60s, drug free. I seriously have my doubts, although there's people that will. He's called. In fact, I saw 5 or 6 videos that called him the father of drug free of natural bodybuilding, and he did come out in '81 with the Natural Bodybuilder magazine, and he also started a drug free federation. So these first couple big pages are kind of collages of first is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, upper routine, and then it's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, lower routine. And of course, he does abs, I think, on both of those days, as was typical, especially pre contest. So he starts his chest routine, of course, with the bench press. Now, he's obviously doing very lightweight here. I think they probably took these pictures with in mind that they would use it as an ad for Joe Weider's bench press here. But so then he goes to inclines, of course. He does a couple unusual things, one of which we'll show, and it's dumbbell crossovers, which is kind of like flies, except you actually don't bring the dumbbells together; you cross them over, which is something that you would see more often done with cables. There it is, and you can see he's obviously crossing the dumbbells over. So something you might want to give a try. He also does bench presses on the old school straight up and down leg press, which is different. You probably don't have one of those at your gym, although we had one at the gym that I used to go to, Twin City. And there he is. He moves into triceps with one, or looks like both dumbbells there. Sometimes some guys do that with just one big dumbbell. You can do that too. Here he is doing cable kickbacks. So obviously, you can do that with dumbbells as well. I like that exercise with dumbbells. Never really tried it with cables, but another thing maybe to try. Um, and then we move. This is not necessarily in the order of his training. It's just kind of listed. So then he moves into back, which he does upright rows, which honestly I would think is more of a shoulder exercise, but they have it in here with his back routine. And we'll get into again some of the pictures there. He does stiff leg deadlifts, obviously for the lower back mostly, and maybe hit mid back a little bit. Um, and again, don't pay attention to how much weight's being used in these things because he worked out with a lot more than that. And of course, you have your power chins with extra weight. He's got the strap with a dumbbell on it and doing some, and it doesn't even, it looks like a pretty much normal grip pull up there. And then we move into shoulders, where he's going to do, of course, the military press. He also does behind the neck press, and which we will show a picture of that later. Again, they're kind of out of order. And here he is doing front raises, which are really good for the front delts. Okay, and then of course he moves into. We already did some tricep stuff, but we'll get into his leg routine, which is a few exercises. And here it is. He starts with squats. Now he really, he's only doing, geez, that's like a half squat there. But trust me, in his workouts, he went deep below parallel actually. And again, he could do squats with like 500 pounds. Here he is doing the old school leg press. Again, you can see it's like a pittance of weight on there, but I guarantee you he used a lot more in his real workouts. These pictures were just for demonstrations, as mentioned, which is kind of typically the case. There he is doing sissy squats with a pair of dumbbells, which was a favorite of Vince Gironda. And again, I mentioned in the last video, Vince was not a big fan of regular squats. There he is, and you got, of course, the old school style leg extensions, and then of course leg curls, which you see in that bottom picture to the right there. Nothing fancy. Um, Calf work, of course, which on the left there he's doing just holding dumbbells and doing. They're calling them heel raises. You call them calf raises, heel raises, and then he's doing them same thing on the machine there. Here he is doing rows and with the end of the bar, as you can see. And then there's the behind the neck press, which I mentioned we would show. And we move into the arms, which of course, and he did like a three-way superset for biceps, starting with the regular old standing barbell curl. And again, he allegedly can do these with strict over 200 pounds. Then he goes into superset exercise number two, which this was another old standby that all these guys pretty much used, and that's dumbbell alternate curls on the incline bench there. And then he finishes off with, kind of a pumper for just a shape builder for the arms, of course, which is concentration curls. All right. So, not a ton of exercises. And again, he's probably doing 3, 4 sets of 8 on those, as he does on most of his stuff. Here he's doing hanging leg raises, of course, which is primarily abs. And then he also does, they're calling them pull ins. I don't know, we might call it a crunch on the top there, and then just regular sit ups on the bottom. But I think he did those for every workout. And of course, for abs and calves, he's doing more reps. There he is in that 66 meet with Arnie. And I thought maybe his abs looked a little better, and I thought his legs looked maybe a little bit bigger and a little bit more defined, and that's why he beat Arnie at that time. Although Arnie's chest and arm size probably has a little bit on Chet. But judges felt like Chet was a winner. There's Arnie conceding. Um, and again, supposedly Chet claimed that he was drug free during this time. Now, why would a nice guy, lie about that? Well, later on when he started, this is his bodybuilding resume, by the way. You could see that he won Mr. LA. I think the first thing he ever won in like 60 was Mr. Wisconsin, went on to win Mr. America, Mr. Universe. Again, that mass, I don't think you get there without steroids at all. Is it possible I'm wrong? Yeah, and there's some people think that he was drug free. Now, in this picture, a little bit older, obviously, I could see where he would, you could definitely have that physique without drugs. So at this point, he's probably training drug free. So he started this magazine in 1981. There he is on the cover, obviously. And it even says Lou Ferrigno speaks out for natural bodybuilding. And the point there is just because people eventually advocate for natural bodybuilding doesn't mean they've been doing natural bodybuilding for their whole career. And you can see that man. That's another issue of that magazine. Anyway, we talk about FFMI, which is your fat-free mass index, and it talks about your height and your weight, and then like your percent body fat, and it comes up with this FFMI thing. And supposedly, according to that, um, Chet could feasibly have been drug free. For what that's worth, this is in 2009 where he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, Bodybuilding Hall of Fame, and he's like 70, I believe, here, in fantastic shape, obviously. Um, was he not taking anything here? Yeah, very possibly. Could he have been on a little TRT? Maybe. But that's about it for chat. So thanks for watching. Please hit those like buttons and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks, and I'm out.